Welcome, everyone. It's Career Happy Hour, 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time every Friday. We will be here broadcasting live on a topic of interest and answering your burning career questions. I'm Andrew Beach. I am a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you understand themselves better in order to communicate your value to others to find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. And that's through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. If that's something you have interest in getting support, maybe a little dose of confidence this week, then you're more than welcome to access the application below this video, regardless of which platform you're joining from, whether that be YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Gosh, I think I was going to go live on Instagram. What happened to me? I had a streak going. And perhaps I should get my Instagram started up here so that people know that I'm not joking. So hang tight, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Let me know where you're joining from here today. The topic, of course, today is going back to office. For some people, that's a no-go. Is that you? So let me know where you're joining from. And I'm going to set up my little tripod here so we can get our friends from Instagram engaged. We'll just kind of set this off to the side. Nobody will care, right? It's not a big deal. I'll get over to the live switch. There we be. Okay. And I'll just go live on that one. And we'll be ready to go. Now, what I'd encourage you to do is, because this is around things like leadership development and career and that sort of thing, is that we want you to share with us, if you would, your LinkedIn profile. So if you have a LinkedIn profile that you would like to share with everyone in order to get connected in some capacity, I would consider this an opportunity to get some exposure for yourself, regardless of which of these platforms you're on. Often the chat will go, and actually interact or connect with different solutions. So there's a cross-platform chat on some of these. So your stuff, let's say you put a chat in on LinkedIn, guess what? It'll actually go through Restream, my service, and show up on YouTube. So the people watching the live stream on YouTube, if they see the chat, they'll have access to your LinkedIn profile. That gives you additional opportunities to be found. I'd also encourage you to share this broadcast out if you think there's someone that might find just a shred of value in this concept or this talk today, or this community. This is a community, by the way. This is an opportunity for us to share information, to connect with each other. If you put your LinkedIn profile in the chat, what you are saying to everyone here is that you are indeed open to being connected with and having network meetings. It's hard enough nowadays to get people's attention and have these network meetings. Some of us experiencing Zoom fatigue. I think that's a real thing. I'd be curious to know if, some of you are from Zoom. I don't know if you are or not, but send me a private message if that works better for you. I'd like to know, do people at Zoom actually also experience Zoom fatigue? I'd be kind of interested to know. Now, if you have any questions, certainly I'm here to answer them. That's what Career Happy Hour is all about. Then please access the feature here to put in a chat question or what have you. If you're not comfortable doing that, the link in the description below actually has a way for you to come on live during this session, and you'll be able to come into the back end and put the name anonymous and add anonymous question in the private chat on the back end of Restream. So that's most of today's housekeeping. And then certainly, if you want the live coaching, use that link that you see in the description. I'll also put that same chat here. And so you have an opportunity to see the information on all the different applications that I'm broadcasting on. So what is the topic today? Well, I've had a lot. I'm actually kind of surprised at how many people are resistant at going back to office. So she's, some of these folks are looking at their situation. It was a big disruption to go work from home full time, but once they did, they really liked it. And I expected at some point people would get tired like me, I'm tired of working from home. I'd love to at least have a hybrid arrangement where I could go to an office and see some of my colleagues. Not that it's kind of like, I look at it like being a grandparent. Maybe I'm not a grandparent yet, but this is what I imagine as a grandparent. I imagine that I go get to see my grandkids. We take them out for lunch. We load them up with sugar, and we drop them back. We drop them back at their parents' house, and then they get to deal with the fallout of that interaction. So yes, that's kind of how I imagine this work from home thing. I wouldn't mind going to the office because I can always drop off the sugar laden children with the with the parents, and then go back to my own home. So the hybrid is really attractive to me. It gives opportunity to maybe have a mixture, some diversity there. Some days yes, some days no. Other companies are looking for something more strict, and you're seeing it now. You're seeing it on LinkedIn. Companies have the work from the office, going back to office. I think there's even I think so they have, it came out, it was what, WFH, work from home, and now they're talking BTS, BTO, back to office, BTO, or hybrid. So if we think about that, there's three choices here, and I'd like to get your input on which one you feel. Actually, put these in some kind of order. If you could access the chat and just say, hey, which of these is number one position that you prefer? Some people are like, hey, I just want to work from home, WFH, work from home. If it's back to the office, then put back to the office as number one. And then third would be hybrid, would be a mixture. So if you want to, in the chat, just let me know, is it, and put them in some kind of order. So for me, it would be hybrid, back to office, and then work from home. It's not that I don't enjoy or appreciate the concept of work from home. I just don't like it 100%. So I will put work from home now in last place, now that I've had a chance to do it for a while. I like being around people. That's how I'm wired. And I love being around my family. And I know that there's a delineation there that we all need to work, whether it's work from home, back to the office, or hybrid. There's always going to be management. And balance is exactly that. It's an action. Balance is not static. So if you think you can balance and have that be static, I think that's a fool's errand. But the idea, what I'm saying here is balance is something that requires action. And sometimes, some weeks, it's going to be more work from home than hybrid. Other weeks, it might be more in the office than at home, right? There's always going to be this flux. And, trying to manage work from home and family and drawing lines there in the sand to say, okay, work time is over and family time is here. That's, I think, in my mind, much harder to manage than a hybrid situation where you would have some days in the office, some days not. Because once you leave the office, you leave the office. It's a little more cut and dry that you can turn the page on those kind of activities. So I had some thoughts here today. I was going to run through some concepts or some ideas that you can put into practice to help you plan or in some way decide how are you going to work around, mitigate the fact that you don't want to go back to office, the BTO. So is it BTO, work from home, or hybrid? What is your preference? And so here's the problem. The problem is we feel like we have no power. We feel like company is creating policy that we don't control. We feel like there's an adjustment period that we might have to go through, and we're just not looking forward to that change management practice that we have to put into action. And it can be nerve-wracking. Maybe you're wrecked and full of anxiety and you want to stay, leave, or quit. I don't know what this looks like for you, but you have options. I think the first thing to consider here is you have options, and to build a plan. And that plan would include things like considering all of these options or all of these alternatives. If you decide that you don't want to go back to the office, there's a point at which you'll make go, no-go decisions based on the plan that you put together. And in the near term, what that would mean is at least laying the groundwork for a conversation. And we'll talk about that in a second. But the plan is to consider all alternatives. Think about go, no go decisions where you would be work from home, hybrid, and then back to the office. What does that transition look like? Come up with a plan for that you can present to your leadership. And when you have those conversations, they'll be extremely pleased that you're actually prepared. And that is a proactive way that you can have the conversation and say, this is what I see that it looks like. Is that something you would accept? And can I get your approval on that? And so therefore you're demonstrating a couple of things. One, that you can have difficult conversations, and two, that you've given this some thought, maybe more thought than they have, and you've broached the subject rather than waiting for them to bring it up. So as a leader, they will appreciate that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't give consideration for that plan to be rejected or in some way modified. And you should be ready for that, right? And say, hey, the hard and fast date is this date. What I could support is maybe an idea of you could use some of your banked time off, anything that you have in the balance there. And we could do Fridays off for 3 months, something like that. Since, spring break and summer are coming, you may look at that and plan more tactically to say, what about this? So if this is not acceptable, then what is? And that's where negotiation comes in. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's the first thing, is build a plan. Have some sort of plan. Consider all the alternatives. And the alternatives, as I see it, is on the screen, right? Actually, there's 4 alternatives. That would be work from home, back to the office, hybrid, or you find something else, right? So that would be leave the organization. So let me edit those options and put quit. There we go. So there's 4 options there, right? There's work from home, back to the office, hybrid, or you quit. Resignation, if you will. So they're talking about these great resignations, and I suspect that these transitions, these kind of changes that organizations are putting upon their people, is creating this great resignation, and a lot of people are cutting that off at the pass. They don't even want to consider a discussion. They're just going to leave. So they'll quit or find something else in advance of any back to the office date, and that is happening. That is absolutely happening. So that's something to think about. Those are the 4 options, and have a contingency plan or some sort of response to each one of these in making your decisions. The first thing, build a plan. Second thing, there is a strategy called do nothing. And sometimes this does work. However, I believe the procrastinator in me often loses at the end of the day, because if I wait till a day and time that a decision is made for me, and I'm forced by an employer to do my go, no go decision making, then this doesn't pan out. I end up being separated or in some way put on limited duty or, a corrective action plan, right? We don't want to have a negative outcome there. I would consider, though, the do nothing strategy for those organizations that you feel that the leadership is, and I say this in an affectionate way, of course, is a little dysfunctional. They don't really plan very well. They hadn't considered that somebody wouldn't come back to the office. They're just kind of oblivious to that thing. And they don't have a lot of people that are, maybe they're short on people, and you're in a position of strength to negotiate staying in a work from home or a very limited hybrid situation where, it's mostly work from home, a little bit of hybrid here and there. So think about that, is that and this strategy, this do nothing strategy and negotiating hard when that go, no go decision comes, actually works really well if you have financial runway. If I have 6-9 months reserves in the bank and my family and I can survive for a long period of time and I'm not attached to any outcome, then certainly I could take that strategy if that was my intention. If it's not your intention and you don't have financial runway, the do nothing strategy may not work as well for you and might actually increase your anxiety and your stress. So we certainly wouldn't advocate a do nothing strategy for everyone, only those that enjoy the crash and burn if they have the financial way to do that. I say that affectionately, of course, because you're choosing that. Each of these is a choice, right? You can choose to build a plan, you can choose to do nothing, or you can choose to negotiate. And that's the third thing to consider, is prepare a negotiation strategy. And whether that's hybrid or work from home or back to the office or quitting, you cross those bridges when you get to them. You don't offer the quit as a takeaway at the front end of a negotiation. You find out what is or what isn't negotiable based on your organization, your team, your leader, and what their tolerance level is for you being or not being in the office. And what are the boundaries? What are the guardrails they've established? What is the policy? Familiarize yourself with that, and then prepare your negotiation. And one of the things that would really help that process, that conversation, is the concept of identifying what you have done during the pandemic in a work from home situation that you've been able to perform, that you've gotten the productivity, that you stood in the gap when other people quit or maybe got sick or whatever. You were the person there, the strong force, if you will, and you were the one making things work. Let's just put it that way. You kept the team going. I stood in the gap when other people didn't. And this is where you need to document some of the things that you've accomplished during the pandemic, and that you were capable of doing this, even if there was a lack of staffing, a lack of resources, or there was a disruption in the operation, or the supply chain broke. Think about some of your accomplishments during this time, and make sure you have those documented and prepared to share in any negotiation. And come with evidence rather than, hey, I just don't want to come back. So that's the other part of negotiation. It isn't, hey, here's my negotiation, I don't want to come back. And so you have a choice either to keep me or fire me. And if you keep me, work from home, that's great. If you fire me, that's okay too, is what we're saying. And we're not coming there with a proactive, productive conversation. We're coming there with a take it or leave it conversation. And that can work, but it may not serve you in the long run to have that kind of approach. So come with evidence. Don't just come with, I don't want to come back. I just don't want it. And think about that negotiation as having many components. And think of all the components that are on their column. Think of all the components on your column. They want people back to the office because it has camaraderie and there's more effective operations, and you can monitor progress, and teams often work better in the same space, right? There's a lot of value in being on site, but then there's also a lot of value to having freedom and working from home and all the things on your side that you were still able to interact with the team and produce results. And think about all the options there, and what are the alternatives to strict work from home or strict back to the office. There has to be happy medium somewhere in the middle. And I would anticipate that some organizations are really considering going with a process back to the office. So, maybe it's work from home today, and then in the month of, let's say, April, it's 2 days in the office. And then the month of May, it's 3 days in the office. And then after that, it's up to the division managers or the VPs or what have you. And for the most part, as long as you're producing, you can do whatever hybrid workplace works for you. So it just it depends on that situation. So some companies are actually delineating these policies, and you need to familiarize yourself with what those are and see what your tolerance level is for that. So that's the negotiation. So that's the third, right? So first, build a plan. Second, consider the pluses and minuses of a do nothing strategy. Third, negotiate, right? Prepare a negotiation if there's indeed a happy medium between strict work from home and strict back to the office, if neither of those are palatable to either side. Then the fourth one is have a contingency plan. Contingency planning means, hey, if I know this thing is coming, I need to take steps to make sure that I'm in a good space in the event that I no longer have employment. And just as much as we believe that the talent market is good now, it won't always stay that way. Everything runs in cycles, and I'm here to be the guy crying from the rooftops or what have you, or sounding the alarm that, just as we've had so many years of growth doesn't mean we won't at some point in the future have years like 2008, 2007, where the tables were turned. There were a lot more candidates for employment than there were open positions. And just as you may think it's good right now, it won't stay that way. I can assure you that if you've been around the marketplace long enough, you'll probably agree with me. But the idea is, hey, if I get to the point where there's a stalemate, or we haven't had something come up, or what have you, there should be a contingency. And certainly work from office is an option if you need the income, right? So if the income is coming in and you are willing to go back to the office for a period of time, but you don't want to keep it that way, you do want to find a remote work opportunity, then that's part of your contingency planning. That is, hey, I'm going to give myself maybe at interim 90 days to find something else, at which point I will have saved enough money over the course of 90 days. Maybe you cut your expenses back and put some of your paychecks in the bank, and have a period of time, 3 months or 6 months down the road, where you would be prepared to resign if there wasn't a solution. During that time, of course, you could find other opportunities inside or outside your organization. And with the way things are going in the marketplace, dedicating a certain percentage of your time to that activity is going to be helpful. Perhaps you get, if you do agree to go back to the office, you negotiate either a early start or a late arrival, so that you can facilitate things like interviews or network meetings, that sort of thing, that you can actually have some time accessible during a work day to actually do some of the activities of job search. So that's something to think about. Is if part of your negotiation is, I'm coming back to office, but would it be okay if I had maybe a late arrival one day, or work a half a day on this day and make it up on the other side, right? Anyway, so think about those options. I would also encourage you to not decrease your level of productivity. You still need to perform your job. You still want to leave that place with maybe a good reputation, a reference or referral, and have an opportunity to provide to cross a bridge instead of burning it. It's just so much easier to do that. And then certainly your exit outside of working hours, trying to do a job search is very challenging. So if you're trying to do a job search on the evenings and weekends, I've not seen that always work successfully. At some point, you'll need to have an interview. At some point, you need to meet somebody during the workday. Perhaps you negotiate a 2-hour lunch every day, or 11 to 1 o'clock every day of the week. You're just not at your desk. You're somewhere else, offsite. Perhaps you'll have to find a place to do that. And there's steps you can take to build a plan around your job search process. And so that's number 4, have a contingency plan in the event you have to go back to the office to find something else that meets your needs. And then step 5, I'll go with 5 things today, 5 things to actually continue working from home. And that would be resignation. And resignation without another job is certainly got risk attached to it. And so for those who have financial means and have taken the time and energy and effort to bank some of their income so that they have some financial runway, that's a little bit of an easier conversation, and you don't feel so stressed out about it. Perhaps you have another income in the family. If that's something you have, that's even better. And having a plan for that, if you decide to resign without another job, certainly puts you at risk. However, it does free up your days to focus on job search. And so while you're work from home, you have some flexibility, because organizations recognize you may have children underfoot or other obligations, or ailing parents, that sort of thing. These things are fairly normal today. And so taking time for yourself during the day is a little bit easier when you work from home. You don't have the same level of privacy and confidentiality if you are indeed working in the office trying to do the same thing. So I would use this time that you have right now to actually plan this process. Hey, Charlotte, good to see you. Let's see what she has to say. Charlotte says, hey, thanks, Andrew. I always learn something from you. Good. I appreciate that. Have a wonderful weekend. No job yet, so no work from home issues. Yeah, just keep swinging the bat. I mean, what I've realized, and it's proven to me over and over again, is that it's not the quality of your resume. It's not even the quality of your application or perhaps even your credentials. It's the quality of your relationships and the capacity of you to have contributed enough to another individual for them to stake their reputation on your candidacy, whether there's a position open or not. And that is certainly a process. And that process requires some effort, actually probably more effort than just putting in an application, for sure, because that's traditionally just administrative work. But building relationships does require time, energy, and effort. So I'm actually going through the time, energy, and effort right now of looking at all of my LinkedIn connections, and there are close to 10,000 of them, and labeling them A, B, or C. And I want to find and create for myself a list of A players that are willing. And so an A player to me would be somebody that that I know well, they know me well, and we're willing to promote each other's causes, as well as perhaps I feel good about investing in their situation, and they reciprocate, right? So you can actually probably create an avatar profile, or who do you want on your A list. And so when I get to that point, I kind of have this idea or thought in my mind that these people are willing to, without a doubt, without question, promote me to anybody, serve as a reference perhaps, or advance my cause inside their organization. So that's something to consider. And each day is an opportunity for you to connect with a new person. And we should think of today as a success if we had a great conversation with a person. And so the nice thing is I have a standing Friday coffee with a group of guys. And so I get to see a group of gentlemen every Friday morning, and we're building a relationship. And there's in this group of guys, there's a new guy showed up. So I'm now at the front end of building a relationship with somebody new and seeing how I can add value before I decide to take. Giving before taking. So not that I'm a taker by nature, or that anybody should be, but the idea is if you contribute, you shouldn't feel weird asking for something. And if you feel like that, you've actually activated the law of reciprocity, then you have standing to ask. They don't have, of course, you don't have standing to expect positive response. So good. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming, Charlotte. I do appreciate that. If anyone else has any questions, certainly I'm happy to answer. If you have any questions about leadership or work from home or interviewing or networking from remote locations. Who did I talk? I talked to somebody late last year, I think. Late last year, he was working remotely from the Bahamas, and so I had a network meeting with somebody who normally I think is in Connecticut or something, but he was working for a couple of months from the Bahamas. I was like, it doesn't really matter. The nice thing about this work from home and the pandemic and it's made the world just a little bit smaller. And I think that's a good thing, that we've really created an opportunity to connect and are more willing to do so than we were before. So that's something to consider. Looks like we have another contribution here from Nick. Hi, Nick. Good to see you. Great to reconnect, Andrew. Is WFH the new normal? No, it's not. So I think that the answer to this question is there is nothing normal. The only objective I think I'm trying to communicate here is you need to decide, what is your preference? What does the mix look like? How do you want to handle that? And what is your value proposition or your your conversation that you're having with organizations, if you're in a place, Nick, where that's honoring work from home and you like it, then there is nothing to change. However, I can tell you that for those organizations that are hybrid or back to the office, that your interest in working from home could have some downsides. And that is you're not in the office, therefore you're not present and don't get FaceTime on side conversations or coffee chats or water coolers or, a lunch here and there. You have to be way more intentional and deliberate in building relationships because you're not you're not sharing the same space. And therefore, things like promotions or strategic project assignments and that sort of thing may not come your way because you haven't taken the time to be present with those individuals. So there is, there's only trade-offs. I don't think there's anything that's great or perfect. There's trade-offs. If I'm in the office, I'm a known commodity. People see me. I become more familiar. Because I'm more familiar, they're more comfortable recommending me for things or promoting me into opportunities. It's just a fact. And so if I'm work from home in that kind of environment, then I have to be really deliberate, really intentional about strategic interactions. And maybe 1 or 2 times a month, I'm going to the office to be present with the right people. But it's not a guarantee. And so the good news is you get to decide. The world is your oyster. And as long as you're proactive in planning this process, you can certainly get the outcomes you desire. And that's what I help people do. I help them create that plan, that map. I help them, work the networking to get the right conversations started and maintained over time. And I help them with the confident communications. And so if this is something that any one of you need, there is an application in the description, and I'm happy to have an offline discussion with anybody about our services. So, okay. Well, that's it. That's all I have for this week on Career Happy Hour. I hope you got some insights on thoughts or things that you can do as an individual to plan your staying in a work from home status, recognizing that everything has a cost and a trade-off. So great. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you next Friday for Career Happy Hour. Bye now.